Hey guys, in the last video we were able to add the UI to our place order component, which is this piece of code right here, and we were able to end it off by adding this use effect here which executes a get payment intent, and as you can see here it calls an Axios post method to the backend, passing along with it the total from the cart. So now that we have this API to make our payment intent request to Stripe on the back end, we're going to go ahead and move over from the front end to the back end now. So we're going to go ahead, collapse this folder, and enter server.js. And here, if you look at this layout, we're going to start off by adding the backend route, the backend controller, and then we're going to retrieve the client secret that's going to be sent from the backend as a response from Stripe over to the front end, and we're going to store that value into a component state on place order component. So going here to our server.js, we're going to copy this, we're going to paste, and we're going to call this what was the route here? We got to match this to this here. So I'm going to take this API payment, and this here is going to be payment routes. Payment routes, and this will be routes payment. Okay, so now we're gonna have to go over to our routes in the backend and create the payment file, payment.js. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over, grab the category route, and just copy everything from here. Close that now and paste it into the payment and do some tweaking. So I'll go ahead and remove this, call it payment controller. Call this payment. All right, for the authenticate JWT, all right, there is a type over here. If you look, it says authenticate JWT. So this is obviously a misspelling, and I can only assume that the other routes that are making use of this authenticate JWT has this misspelled as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of this right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to correct the name here. Copy this corrected piece of code and start correcting it in all the places that it shows up. So I'm going to correct it here, paste it there, save. I'm going to start within all the routes to see where it's being called. Okay, it's not being called here. Let's check the category. Yes, here. So we'll swap that out. Up here. Save. Now close this out. Let's see, try filter. It's not called here. Close this out. Payment, that's what we're working on now. And then finally the product. Okay, swap this. Swap this. Okay. Authenticate. All right, so we made our corrections and all the files that we're calling that middleware. So I'll close this out. And then let's see. All right, but then we also got to go into the middleware itself, or the file for this. So let's see. We're going to go to middleware authenticator. And as you can see here, it's misspelled. So JWT. authenticate JWT. All right, save this, and then everything should be good to go. All right, close that out. All right, little side step, but that's fine. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete one of these routes here, and we're gonna need a post route to, this one's gonna be forward, and let's go ahead and check what we got so far here. So we did API payment, and again, we have to match it to this whole string. So API payment, and then we need, this one is gonna be payment intent. So I'll copy this, come over here and payment intent, and the middleware authenticate JWT, which is gonna make sure that the user is authenticated in order to use this route. And we'll change this to payment controller, and this will be called create payment intent. Go ahead and save that. All right, next step is to move over to our payment controller, which we don't have right now. So we're gonna have to create a payment controller, do payment.js. Let's see. All right, so next what I'm gonna do is, all right, so we're gonna do exports dot, we called create payment intent async. We're gonna get the request and the response. Let's see. All right. Okay. All right, and now what we're gonna want to do is we want to grab the item that's being passed from the front end. So when we make this Axios post request, we're sending along this total property here with the total of the cart. So we can go ahead and grab that by doing a request.body, right? And we're gonna destructure that from it. So we'll grab the total. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna console log this to the back end just to make sure that as of now that we are getting the data that we're gonna need arriving from the front end over to the back end. So I save that, and I'm gonna pull this up here. I'm gonna refresh this page here. Go to the network, place order. Let's see here. If I look at the headers, let's see, it's a get request. That's not what I wanted. Let me go here to the cart. Okay, proceed, Stripe. All right, so here's the payment intent. The payload that we're passing is this amount here, okay? And obviously we're not gonna get a response because we haven't handled that here in the back end. All right, all right, good. So, but we do see that, oh yeah, what am I saying? Actually well, here, as I was saying, for the payload, this is saying that the payload that's being sent to the back end, and it's also being console logged here on the back end server as well. Okay, all right, so that's confirmed. So next what we're gonna want to do is, let's see here. All right, let's mark these off though. We did the route, backend controller, that's currently what we're working on now. Okay, so next, so what we're gonna do is, all right, so what we're gonna do is we're going to go to the Stripe documentation. I mentioned that there's the payment intent create. This is what we're gonna make use of. So the payment intents API. All right, so if we look here, creating a payment intent, and we're using Node.js as our backend server. So this is exactly the piece of code that we're going to want to look at. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and copy this piece of code here. Come over to our code, and I'm going to paste that in. We're going to make an adjustment here. For this piece here, where it's making it required, I'm going to delete this from our function and place this outside of it. All right. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to have to change this value here, which is a secret key that's being passed in that demonstration, but obviously we're going to have to make use of our own. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to grab our secret key by navigating over to, we're going to do a require. We're going to have to navigate to, let me collapse this here. Our backend environment variables are located here in the config and keys. And if you look at this piece of code here, if we're live, in other words, if we're in production, it's going to execute this prod.js. Otherwise, it's going to execute this dev.js, which is here. All right. So we're in development now. So what's going to happen is it's going to execute this piece of code here, which if you look, we have our Stripe secret key environment variable that's stored here. So we want to grab this property value from this config file. All right. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to have to navigate to, we're going to go back one directory. We're going to have to go to config folder and then go to the keys. And so depending whether we're in production or in development, it's going to run the appropriate execute the appropriate file, and we want to grab the Stripe secret key from it. All right, next, go ahead and plug in that value right inside. Oops, nope, wrong one. Grab this here and place it right inside here. All right, next, let's see here. All right, so now we're gonna call, we have the wait. This is since we're making an API call to the Stripe server, this might take this could take some time, so that's why we're doing, it's gonna be asynchronous, and we're doing an await because this could take some time for getting a response back from Stripe, but we want to wait for that response. All right, so we want to wait to Stripe payment intents create, and for the amount, we're going to remove this and take this piece of total that we're getting back from the front end, paste that right in here. The currency is going to be US dollars, so USD, and this payment method types, you can remove this. All right, the reason being is because you can do that. Here, let me go. This setting here, we could do this ourselves on the Stripe dashboard ourselves, which is much more easier. But right here, just know that this right here, it's not needed here. We don't need to have this here. All right. The main thing right now is the amount and currency. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this. All right. Next, I'm gonna go here and do some, just verify that at this point we do get a payment intent, which if everything works, it will be an object that's sent to us from the Stripe system, and returning to us some details as far as the payment intent, as well as the secret key or the client secret that we're going to be sending back to the front end. Okay, so I'm going to save, and then I'm going to come back here to our app. All right, I am going to refresh this page, go to the back end, And if I expand this, you see we get, as I mentioned, we get some data here, an object back from Stripe with details about the Stripe. We get some details from Stripe, right? But the most important thing here that we need at the moment is this Stripe secret here, right? So this particular property here, which we're sending back to the front end, all right? But this worked, and so far so good. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go and collapse this. All right, next, so we're gonna want to grab that client secret. So we're gonna go ahead and send the response back to the client or to the front end, do a response status of 200.json. We're gonna send the JSON object back with the client secret, and this will be the payment intent. Yeah, client secret. I think it was underscore, right? Yeah, client secret, client underscore secret. Okay. So client underscore secret. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move over from the back end over back to the front end and check that that response came back to us. So what we're gonna do is I am gonna come here and check the network. I'm gonna refresh this page here, place order, the response. Okay, actually, you know what? Let me start here at the cart page. Proceed to checkout, Stripe, and then check the network. We get the payment intent. It's a 200, the status of 200, which is good. And you see the response. We get back the client secret. All right, perfect. So this is exactly what we need on the front end. And so that way the Stripe UI library on the front end can check for it, and if it finds that this client secret, it will be able to display that Stripe form here. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue here. So the way we're gonna do this is, we know that this Axios that this returns a response that we saw the client secret, but we're gonna have to store that in a variable. So I'm gonna do a response here. So we're gonna store that client secret here in the response variable, and then next we're gonna have to store this into our component state here. So we're gonna create a secret or client. We're gonna create client secret, and then the set client secret. Do use state, and by default it's going to be an empty string. All right, we're gonna have to import that as well up here. Use state. Okay, next, now that we have our component state set up here, let's go back down to our response made by Axios. And we are going to, if we get the response back from the back end, at this point or after that response, after the execution, we are going to do a set client secret of the response data dot, see, what do we call it? We called it client secret. So we'll copy this here, come back, client secret. Okay. Okay, so looks like this is running nonstop. All right, so the way we can handle this is over here at the get payment intents. We're actually, yeah, as the second argument, we're gonna have to pass that that empty array here. Okay. And then we get a message: React hook use effect is missing. It has a missing dependency. Get payment intent either included or remove the dependency array. Here, to ignore this here, what we can do is we can go ahead here and grab this yes lint disable next line, and we can paste this right over here, so it will disable this message that we're getting for the missing dependency from this thing here. So we'll just paste that right there, and that's no longer there anymore. All right, great. So now, all right. So the next step is, at this point, we would have a client secret that's coming from the back end. So what we want to do here is just a final test before we move on to the next video. Is I want to after this progress bar, I'm gonna do it right here. I want to output the client secret just to make sure that this component state client secret has the value for the client secret. So I'm gonna come here, do JSON.stringify. I actually gotta wrap it around curly braces like this, and they'll do client secret. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Come back here and look at this. All right, so we get our client secret. All right, perfect. If I refresh, boom, you see for a split moment it's empty because it has to make that HTTP request over to the backend, and then eventually it gets populated. So if I refresh again, you'll see it's empty periodically for a moment, and then it fills in with the client secret. All right, great. So now, so that ends this video here. So in the next step, now that we have this client secret coming from the backend, we can have Stripe UI successfully render its form in this area over here, so that the user can enter their credit card, their payment information. All right, so I will see you in the next video.